Hi Reddit, I am Ashley. I was 17, a senior in high school, and preparing for my college applications. Everything in my life was focused on the future until my sister, Leah, decided to destroy it all. It all started with an accident. Leah had been out partying one night and borrowed my dad's car without permission. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. A police officer stood there, asking for Leah. My parents were confused, but Leah didn't miss a beat. She threw me under the bus without blinking. "She took the car last night," Leah said, pointing at me. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen. I froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't take the car. She's lying." Leah cried, turning on the waterworks. I didn't want to get her in trouble, but she needs to own up to her mistakes. The officer looked at me, his expression skeptical. My parents didn't even hesitate. "Ashley, how could you?" my mom said, her voice full of disappointment. "I didn't do it. I insisted, but it was no use." Leah had already planted the seed, and my parents believed her without question. The fallout was swift and brutal. I was grounded indefinitely, forbidden from using the car or going anywhere other than school. My dad's insurance premium skyrocketed because of the accident, and they blamed me for that too. I thought that was the worst of it, until my parents decided to take things further. "You need to learn responsibility," my dad said a week later. "We've decided that once you graduate, you're on your own. It's time for you to grow up and stop causing trouble." I was stunned. "You're kicking me out? For something I didn't even do?" "This isn't up for debate," my mom said, crossing her arms. "Maybe some time on your own will teach you to take accountability." Leah stood in the corner, pretending to look remorseful, but I saw the smirk she was trying to hide. That was the moment I realized I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. Getting kicked out at 17 was like being thrown into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim. My parents didn't even give me time to figure out a plan. They told me I had 2 weeks to pack up and leave. I spent those 2 weeks scrambling to find somewhere to go. None of my friends' parents were willing to take me in long term, and I didn't have enough saved up to get my own place. On my last night at home, I packed everything I could into a few garbage bags and threw them into the back seat of my car. I didn't say goodbye to my parents or Leah. I couldn't. For the first few months, I lived out of my car. It was the dead of winter, and the nights were freezing, but it was all I had. I'd park in 24-hour grocery store lots, trying to sleep with one eye open to make sure no one bothered me. I worked part-time at a fast food place and started picking up shifts at a diner to make ends meet. It wasn't much, but I was determined to save enough for an apartment. Every day felt like a battle. My teachers at school started to notice that I was falling asleep in class, and one of them pulled me aside after school one day. "Ashley, is everything okay?" Mrs. Carter asked gently. I wanted to lie, but the exhaustion got the better of me. I told her everything. How my parents had kicked me out, how Leah had framed me, and how I was trying to survive on my own. Mrs. Carter's kindness changed everything. She helped me connect with a local program that offered housing assistance to teenagers in crisis. Within weeks, I was living in a small shared apartment with other young adults in similar situations. It wasn't perfect. The apartment was cramped and the rules were strict, but it was better than my car. I finally had a roof over my head and a place to shower and cook meals. With a stable place to live, I was able to focus on finishing high school. I graduated on time, and though my parents didn't bother to show up to the ceremony, Mrs. Carter was there, cheering for me from the audience. I worked full-time after graduation, saving every penny I could. By the time I turned 20, I'd managed to rent a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. I didn't hear much from my family during those years. The few times my mom called, it was always about Leah, how she was doing, how proud they were of her, how she'd landed some new job or bought a new car. Not once did they ask about me. The turning point came when I got a promotion at work, moving from a retail job to an entry-level position at a logistics company. It was a huge step up for me, both financially and professionally. I threw myself into my work, determined to build a life I could be proud of. And slowly, things started to fall into place. One day, I got a call from an unknown number. Ashley, my mom's voice said when I picked up. I hadn't heard from her in over a year, and the sound of her voice immediately put me on edge. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. "It's about Leah," she said, her voice hesitant. "She's in some trouble." I felt a twinge of satisfaction at those words, though I didn't let it show. "What kind of trouble?" I asked. "She had an accident," my mom said, "and there's a lawsuit involved. She might lose her house, Ashley. She needs help." I almost laughed. "And what does that have to do with me?" "Well," my mom said, her voice soft, "you've done so well for yourself. We were hoping you could step in." I couldn't believe the audacity. "You're kidding, right?" I said. "Ashley, she's your sister," my mom said, as if that justified everything. The anger I'd buried for years came rushing back. "You mean the sister who got me kicked out and left me to fend for myself?" I snapped. "The one who ruined my life and didn't care?" "That was a long time ago," my mom said defensively. "You need to let it go." "Let it go?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You have no idea what I went through because of her lies. And now you want me to bail her out?" I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt a strange sense of relief. For years, I'd avoided confronting my family because I didn't think it would change anything. And maybe it hadn't. But at least now they knew I wasn't the same scared, powerless teenager they'd abandoned. A week after the call, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Leah. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity and maybe a little spite got the better of me. "What do you want, Leah?" I said flatly. "Ashley," she started, her tone surprisingly soft. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now," I said. "In person," she clarified. "Please, just hear me out." I didn't owe her anything, but part of me wanted to see what she had to say. I agreed to meet her at a local coffee shop, setting my expectations low. When I walked in, Leah was already there, looking as polished as ever in designer clothes and perfect makeup. It was hard to believe she was supposedly in trouble. She stood up when she saw me, offering a hesitant smile. "Thanks for coming," she said. I sat down across from her, folding my arms. "What do you want?" She sighed, fiddling with the edge of her coffee cup. "I know you're mad at me," she said. "Mad?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "That's putting it lightly." She flinched but nodded. "I deserve that," she admitted. "What I did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry." Her words caught me off guard. Leah had never apologized for anything in her life. "Why now?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "What do you really want, Leah?" She hesitated, then said, "I'm in over my head. The accident, it's bad, Ashley. They're threatening to take my house. I don't know what to do." "Not my problem," I said bluntly. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt bad for her. But then I remembered the countless nights I spent sleeping in my car because of her lies. "I know I messed up," she said, "but you've done so well for yourself. Can't you help me? Just this once?" I stared at her, wondering if she even realized how absurd she sounded. "You mean like how you helped me when I was homeless at 17? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She looked down, her face flushed. "I didn't know it was that bad," she muttered. "You didn't care," I shot back. "You were too busy enjoying the life I got kicked out for." The conversation ended with Leah crying and me walking out of the coffee shop. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 days later, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find them standing there, looking uncomfortable. "We need to talk," my mom said. I stepped aside, letting them in, though I wasn't sure why. "We heard you talk to Leah," my dad said, sitting on the edge of my couch. "And?" I asked, leaning against the wall with my arms crossed. "She told us you're refusing to help her," my mom said, her tone accusatory. "That's right," I said, "because I don't owe her or you anything." They both looked taken aback, as if they couldn't believe I wasn't falling in line. "She's your sister," my mom said. "Family helps family." "Funny," I said, "because that's not what you told me when you kicked me out." "That was different," my dad said quickly. "No, it wasn't," I said, my voice rising. "You chose her over me then, and you're doing it again now. But guess what? I'm not a scared teenager anymore. You can't guilt me into fixing your mess." The room went silent. My mom looked like she wanted to argue, but my dad stood up and grabbed her arm. "Let's go," he said quietly. As they walked out the door, my mom turned back and said, "You'll regret this, Ashley." "No," I said firmly. "I won't." After my parents left, I sat on the couch, staring at the door. Their parting words echoed in my mind. "You'll regret this, Ashley." But instead of regret, I felt relief. For the first time, I'd stood my ground. I hadn't let them guilt me, manipulate me, or convince me that I owed them anything. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right decision. The next few weeks were quiet. I didn't hear from my parents or Leah, and I was fine with that. For years, I'd carried the weight of their betrayal, allowing it to fuel my drive to succeed. But now, I realized that I didn't need their approval or their acknowledgement to validate my accomplishments. I'd built my life without them, and I was proud of that. One evening, as I was going through old photos and papers, I came across a picture of me and Leah from when we were kids. We were sitting on the swings in our backyard, grinning from ear to ear. Looking at that picture, it was hard to reconcile the Leah in the photo with the person she'd become. There was a time when we'd been close, when I'd looked up to her and believed she'd always have my back. But people change, and sometimes they don't change for the better. That night, I wrote a letter, not to send, but to get everything off my chest. In it, I poured out everything I'd been holding in for years. How hurt I was when Leah lied about the accident. How abandoned I felt when my parents sided with her. How hard it had been to rebuild my life from scratch. When I finished, I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't need to send it to feel closure. Just writing it was enough. A few months later, I got a call from an old high school friend, Megan. "I heard about Leah," she said, her voice hesitant. "How are you holding up?" I frowned. "What about Leah?" "You didn't hear?" she asked. "She lost her house. The lawsuit didn't go her way." I didn't know how to feel about the news. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied, like it was karma for everything she'd done. But another part of me felt a twinge of sadness, not for Leah, but for the relationship we'd lost. Still, I knew it wasn't my responsibility to fix her life. She'd made her choices, just like I'd made mine. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. I started taking yoga classes, joined a book club, and even signed up for a painting workshop. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. One day, as I was walking through the park, I saw a family having a picnic. The parents were laughing, the kids were chasing each other around, and for a moment, I felt a pang of longing. I'd always wanted a close-knit family, one that supported each other unconditionally. But I realized that I didn't need to cling to the one I was born into. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, who care about you, and who make you feel valued. That realization gave me peace. I didn't need my parents' approval, and I didn't need to fix things with Leah. I had my chosen family, friends like Megan who had been there for me when no one else was. And most importantly, I had myself. Looking back, I'm grateful for everything I went through, even the hardest parts. It taught me resilience, independence, and the value of self-respect. My parents and Leah will always be a part of my story, but they're not the whole story. The rest is mine to write. Hello, Reddit. I'm Ashley, 26. Growing up, I always felt like an extra part of my family. My older sister, Emma, was the golden child, smart, talented, and the center of my parents' world. I, on the other hand, was just there. It was my last year of high school, and I was finally starting to feel like I had a plan for the future. I had been accepted to a local college on a partial scholarship, and I was working part-time in a cafe to save up for expenses. But one day Emma came home with big news. She was pregnant. My parents' reaction was immediate. Total support. "You'll stay here with us," my mom said. "We'll help you raise the baby, and we'll convert Ashley's room into the nursery," my dad added, like it was the most logical thing in the world. "Wait, what?" I said, looking up from my homework. "We'll move you into the basement," my mom said, as if that was a suitable compromise. "It's just temporary." The basement wasn't finished. It was cold, damp, and barely livable. I tried to argue, but my parents shut me down. "This is for Emma," my mom said, her voice sharp. "She needs the space more than you do." For the next few months, I lived in the basement while my parents fussed over Emma. They threw her a baby shower, painted the nursery, and bought her every baby gadget imaginable. I worked longer hours at the coffee shop, desperate to save up enough to move out. But before I could, the final blow came. One night, I came home to find my parents waiting for me in the kitchen. "Ashley," my dad started, "we've been thinking about the future. With the baby coming, things are going to be tight financially." "Okay," I said cautiously. "We think it's time for you to start paying rent," my mom said. My jaw dropped. "You want me to pay rent? For living in the basement?" "It's only fair," she said. "Emma needs the support right now, and this will help the family." That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay. The next day, I found a cheap room for rent with 3 other girls. It wasn't much, but it was better than the basement. I moved out within a week, leaving behind a family that had made it clear where I stood in their priorities. Over the next 8 years, I built a life for myself. I worked my way up from the coffee shop to a stable office job, eventually landing a position in marketing. I moved into my own apartment, made friends who felt more like family than my parents ever had, and even started traveling. My parents never called to check on me. The only time I heard from them was through occasional text updates about Emma and her kids. Then, last month, everything changed. I got a call from my mom. "Ashley," she said, her tone unusually sweet. "How have you been?" I was immediately suspicious. "Fine." "Why?" "Well," she started, "we need your help." Here it comes, I thought. She launched into a long story about how Emma was struggling. She had 3 kids now, and her husband had left her. My parents were doing everything they could to support her, but their finances were stretched thin. "We were hoping you could help out," she said finally. I laughed out loud. "Help out? You mean financially?" "Yes," she said, like it was the most reasonable request in the world. I couldn't believe the audacity. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You want me to give money to the family that kicked me out, turned my room into a nursery, and never bothered to check on me for 8 years? "Ashley, don't be like that," she said. "We're family." "No," I said firmly. "We're not." She started crying, saying things like, "Emma's kids don't deserve to suffer, and we're all trying to do what's best for the family." But I wasn't buying it. Where was this family attitude when I needed it? I said, "You made your choice back then, and now I'm making mine." After that call, my dad tried reaching out, but I ignored him. Emma even sent me a text, saying she was sorry if she'd done anything to upset me. I didn't reply. For years, I'd let their actions dictate how I saw myself. I was the forgotten one, the expendable one. But not anymore. Now, I'm living a life I'm proud of, a life I built on my own. My parents and Emma, they're just part of my past, a reminder of what I overcame. And as for their request for money, let's just say they got my answer loud and clear.